All right, well, good evening. I'm going to call the Tuesday, May 16th Burlington Development and Review Board meeting to order. My name is AJ LaRosa. I'm the chair of the board. And we have on our agenda tonight only two items, 7173 Peru Street and 300 Flynn Avenue, which is sketch plan. So I suspect our meeting will be relatively quick. And I don't see any other communications or any changes to the agenda, so we'll jump right into it. Is the applicant and appellant here for 7173 Peru Street? Yep. Would you want to come up, take a seat? I'll swear you in and we'll proceed. We're waiting. We've gone hybrid. Are we waiting for people online?
We haven't gone hybrid yet, and that'll be your next meeting.
Oh, yeah, right. That's right.
In June.
So we're not waiting for anybody online.
No, do you want to
Well, for the sketch plan.
Would you raise your right hand? And I'm going to give you the oath. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter under consideration is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, just for the record, identify yourself.
Damon Lane?
And you're the owner?
Yep.
Okay. This is an appeal of an administrative denial, and our procedure in those cases is to ask the city to articulate the basis for the denial first. So this is a, just open. Who on the city wants to present this one?
That would be me.
Scott, that's you, I
Yep.
see. Just walk us through.
Sure. So Damon lives and owns historic property. It's on the State Historic Register, state of Vermont. He's looking to replace existing wooden windows with vinyl windows. There's a few items that I pointed out in the staff report. Something that's a little bit unique here, I suppose, is that the windows that are there now are replacements, but they're replacement wooden windows. And they were allowed as replacements in this historic building because they are wooden. The proposed vinyl windows are not acceptable under the standards of 548, the historic preservation standards, nor under the replacement window guidelines for historic buildings that Design Advisory Board updated and I'll say republished within the past year. We have a fairly substantial track record going back to the adoption of the 2008 CDO. I think it was 14 applications for vinyl windows in historic buildings that were denied, so we are consistent about this. A couple of those went to DRB on appeal, and those were upheld. I think at least one of them went to Superior Court Environmental Division, otherwise known as Environmental Court. So it feels a little bit like finality here, but I understand that this is a separate property, a separate application. But we've been pretty consistent in not allowing vinyl replacement windows in historic buildings. So the application was denied, and here it is on appeal.
I have a question. The standards were changed somewhat recently to add fiberglass as an acceptable material. What's
Yep.
the reasoning for the difference between fiberglass and vinyl from the city's perspective?
Well, feel free to pipe in, Mary, and back me up if I miss something. But I guess I'll back up a little bit. Since the 2008 adoption of the CDO, standards around acceptability for materials, whether it's replacement siding or replacement windows, has evolved over time through application review and appeal locally to the DRB and or to environmental court. I'll point out, for example, fiber cement clapboard is now an acceptable material on historic buildings for replacement for wooden siding, for example. I think it was felt that the fiberglass windows, to your question, Caitlin, are of significantly better quality and durability and better, I don't know if reproduce is the right term, but I'll use it, reproduce the appearance and style of the wooden windows as opposed to the vinyl.
I think the term would be replicate, and this is something, one of those, as Scott's alluded to, the evolution of the standards. There was a robust review last year by the Historic Preservation Review Committee to create this policy, and we invited some window retailers to come and demonstrate and provide examples. And there was also support from the architectural community that the evolution of fiberglass windows not only were proving themselves to be more efficient, functional values were better, but the replication of original details, molding, window trim was closer to wood than we were able to capture in some of the clad wood windows. So there was support for in this exploratory period that they did, that they ultimately decided when those details can be replicated, fiberglass was acceptable.
The other question that I have is on the DAV document, it says typically vinyl is not acceptable. Is there like any additional detail on times when vinyl would be acceptable?
I knew that was going to come up. And we've talked about that at staff level as well. The show and tell that we did between window providers, contractors, and the board included consideration of vinyl options, and none of them, let's say, cut the mustard. The board declined to specifically say thou shalt never do vinyl within the context of things evolve over time. That said, I think the windows that are proposed in this application fit into the box of not acceptable. They haven't evolved to the point like the fiberglass windows wherein they would be acceptable.
I have a question, Scott. So there's some new windows, if I read it right, there's some new windows in this house that are vinyl, and they're okay because they're new and they weren't replacing other windows?
There's one, yes, because it is an entirely new window, it was acceptable. And keep in mind the standard that basically says new additions or alterations in historic buildings should differ from what's there now. So that's a key difference. It was an entirely new feature versus a replacement feature.
So you're looking at the window where additions to historic buildings are noticeably different than the original. That's
Yes,
what
yep.
you're saying. And part of the reason, I'm sort of guessing that part of the reason about the vinyl windows is aesthetics. Is that right? Or
Well, aesthetics, but more specifically the standards in 548 about materials, detailing, retentions, dimension retention.
seems like it's aesthetics of the,
Sure, we
The
can group it
vinyl
into
windows don't
aesthetics,
match
right? The city has design review standards under Article 6 and more specifically about historic under 548. Yeah, what does it look like? It's shiny white plastic.
okay.
Scott, is that the concern, the finish of it? For a lawyer, a non-design person, can you maybe look at the specs? I'm struggling with we might accept some vinyl siding, but not these. So like, what are the criteria or factors we should be looking at to decide if the window is acceptable?
Well, I would refer back to this policy. I think I included it in your packet. Yeah, I did.
The guidelines for historic buildings?
Yeah. Again, Mary, feel free to fill in any gaps I might leave. Finish is part of it.
Okay.
Finish, durability. Yeah, finish and durability, I think, detailing.
So are we looking at that list below in the guidelines?
Scroll down.
When we're considering alternatives, the following steps should guide the choice of replacement windows?
Yes.
And are there specific factors in this guide that don't, these windows don't satisfy?
Are there specific, what was that, Jeff? I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through
Looking at
this.
4 bullet points of consider the following items when you're looking at alternatives. And just trying to understand, are there factors we would point to in this list to say these vinyl windows don't satisfy some of these required steps?
I think it really comes down to the material and the finish,
Okay.
That's like the second bullet, basically.
basically.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Do we want to hear from the applicant? So, you've heard some of the discussion. We have your appeal submission, and I'm wondering if you'd like to address any of the board's questions that were asked to staff first before seeing if the board has anything. Finish, look, differential between your windows and what would be otherwise allowed, probably would be helpful.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm particularly curious on how the standard has evolved over time. And can I ask if the manufacturer of this window, Coltec, was part of the show and tell that was done here?
Do you remember, Mary?
We don't know.
I don't specifically remember this manufacturer's name. We saw, the panel saw a great number of windows, but I don't recall the name of this manufacturer.
Because I would agree that most vinyl windows are cheap and are, just fly-by-night type of installers. And I would argue that these are not those. In previous denials, they mention short warranties as indications of short lives. This line has a lifetime warranty, and they don't just throw that around because they have a different level of window that they give a 30-year warranty. So they're differentiating this one from their 30-year warranty, so they have confidence in it. The fact that it is from Nova Scotia and it has the high performance to energy and kind of sealing for wind and moisture prevention, like rain egress, it has to be relatively stiff. It has to be physically high performance to have the kind of sealing capabilities it has. And so that's what attracts me to it, and really the energy performance, that they're about 3 times more efficient than typical windows. That doesn't really address the city's concerns. I think the questions that the board was asking of how does it move from wood was acceptable, then clad wood was acceptable, and clad wood is showing aluminum to the outside. So aluminum is an acceptable appearance, and then fiberglass is an acceptable appearance. And I would, if I had found this performance in a fiberglass window, I would have gotten it. The options I did find was wood clad for 3 times the price. And the price, these windows are gonna cost $2,400, and 3 times the price would be $7,200.
Per window?
No, that's for the 4 of them. And not installed, that's just the window. And this apartment, I'm renting for $850 a month to a single mother, and I'm not, I'm gonna upgrade the kitchen and bathroom, but that difference would be $4,800. That's different. And if that's the difference for the finish of windows that are on the back of a house, that's a big difference. And again, there would be a switch to aluminum clad. You'd be seeing aluminum instead of vinyl, which I think it is different, but it's not super different in the realm of finishes.
You mentioned the durability and lifetime warranty. Do you have any info on that? Or would you be able to get us that information?
Yeah, I didn't, with the original application or appeal, didn't anticipate that the warranty was going to be of interest to the city, but yes, I could provide that. I mean, their website has it too. I don't know if your devices there are web connected.
You're doing mostly casements and awnings, it looks like, these windows,
Yeah.
right? And are they the same 2/2 look? Is that what you're?
Right, yeah, in the discussion with the city did agree that the appearance, they are mimicking the appearance sufficiently. So that's not, the structural appearance, they're not held up over, but yeah, the material appearance is the issue.
They didn't do the option of having a fatter cross rail, or do they do that? I'm just curious.
They do have that option, and they have it in a flat profile, but not in the textured profile. So I chose the 2/2 textured profile rather than having the simulated meeting rail that would be flat. So, but yeah, it is an option if that were preferred.
Leo?
No.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right, so we appreciate you coming and presenting this for us. We'll take it under advisement, and I guess with that, we'll close the public hearing on this. So we'll probably discuss this after the sketch plan meeting tonight.
I would need to plug in.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
good. Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is a sketch plan review, ZSP 23-3, 300 Flint Avenue, Howard Center for Human Services. I'm going to swear you in just because I think we should do that even for sketch plans. So will you raise your right hand? And anybody who wishes to testify? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter under consideration is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
All right, so sketch plan, but you seem to have a pretty well fleshed out project. We have the plans in front of us. I suspect you're probably itching to move forward to application, given the degree of detail put into your plans. So if you want to walk us through quickly, I don't think there's a lot left unresolved. I've looked at it. There's a few questions, but it seemed like staff answered them all pretty strongly. But, you know, it is sketch plan, so you're welcome to present it to us and get our initial feedback, non-binding as it may be.
Sure.
But, yeah.
I do have your presentation, but my adapter's missing, so we've just gone to go get another one, so we'll be able to put that up on the board.
We also have it all here.
Okay, well, thank you. So, just real quickly, I'm Joe Wyeth with White & Burke Real Estate Advisors. We're the development advisor to Howard Center. Sandy McGuire, CFO, COO of Howard Center. And we have Sam Beal with Duncan Wisniewski Architects. He's the architect on the project. And Kevin Warden, who's with Engineering Ventures, the civil engineer. So they'll give the presentation of a quick presentation of the plan when Sandy's done. Sandy was just going to begin with just a brief overview of what Howard Center is planning to do here and why.
Monitor.
So, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to give a high-level summary. We are looking at continuing to use the location down on the corner of Pine and Flynn for outpatient mental health, substance use, and developmental disability service provision. The site location is a great location for us. It has been for many years. It's very accessible to many of our clients, walking, biking, the bus stop right out front, as well as coming by car. And so we've looked at different geographic information for both staff and clients, done heat maps as we've looked at our future needs and really determined this continues to be a great location for the services that we provide in the community. And looking for expanded space for the site. It's a building that was never built for our purposes. It's failing in many ways, and looking to expand the site and improve the site for our purposes, specifically to increase the accessibility and the efficiency for clients who right now have to go to multiple locations to get their services, to be able to come to one location, as well as to increase the staff care coordination that's done across multiple disciplinaries, to be able to have them all in one location as well. So wanting to continue that and
Look at that.
improve those services by
Perfect.
increasing the amount of space that we have in the location in an updated facility. So that's the short answer.
One quick question, I'm just curious. What do you do operationally when this thing's under construction? I assume you're taking down the existing building as the first step?
Very good question. We're working on that plan. We're looking at a couple different components. One, including repurposing our administrative offices at 208 Flynn Avenue, and looking for those folks to be able to be hybrid, remote, or in some other capacity to be able to do some outpatient services. And that's really to try to minimize for our clients as much as possible. You're not coming here right now, you're just gonna go down the street. But also looking at what does it mean as far as providing care to folks. We do a lot in the community, in a variety of locations, including people's homes. What does that look like? Can we increase that? And then what other space might we need to pick up to help as well? So trying to put all those pieces together with as minimal disruption as possible, but there will be some.
Do you want to take us to the next slide? Civil plan?
Sure.
Zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole.
Sure.
You want me to start?
You go.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi, Kevin Warden, Engineering Ventures, also at 208 Flynn Avenue, just down the street from here. And this is the proposed plan. We may not have included the existing conditions, which has a building that spans from Pine Street to Flynn, much like this, but smaller, and is a little more set back from Flynn. It has parking on Pine Street, similar to what you see there, and it has parking off of Flynn, similar to what you see here. So what's changed is that we've become much more efficient with the layout. Instead of single-loaded parking on one side along the western boundary, you can see here it's double-loaded. Parking extends below the building, which Sam will talk about as a larger building. The main entry for most folks visiting the site will be off of Flynn, and there's one curb cut which moves down a little bit from the existing and is much more suited for circling in, dropping off at the front door, and then going into the parking to find a space to park or to loop around and leave, like the shuttle might do, et cetera. We have taken great pains not to extend the developed portion of the site towards Englesby Brook, which is to the north, and the wetland. This parcel spans Englesby, so you can see that on the northern half of the site. And we've had Gilman Briggs wetland biologists look at that, delineate the wetland. We've had ANR out to confirm the delineation. It's definitely a resource we want to protect. And the main way we're doing that, the main functions there are that it's heavily shaded, so we're really not looking at removing any trees. There are some buffers that I want to speak a little bit about that are important, and there are some invasive species, actually back near where the dumpster is proposed, which is close to where the existing dumpsters are. The buffers, there are existing impacts too, which consist of parking, a small building, sidewalks, and just lawn area that's just kind of been mowed and maintained. And this proposes building and parking that extend really no further than those existing impacts. And unlike the existing site, the parking lots and building drain towards the buffer and the wetlands unmitigated, so there's no stormwater treatment on the existing site. buildings and parking all drain inwardly to bioretention and filter areas. And then I think on the next exhibit, if you click ahead, Mary, under that left, right where the hand is, you can see large chambers which water is stored in and then let out at a slow rate back into the Anglesby River after it's been after it's been treated. And then I would just add the benefit of parking below the building and the fact that no rainwater is really hitting that and it's shaded. And we do have some landscaping plans a little later on that show the shading, shade trees, and so forth. There's some utility stuff, but it's pretty straightforward water and sewer utility.
Yeah, before we go past this, I did want to highlight that we worked with BED to locate the transformer, which you probably need to order like last week, based on how far out transformers are. That's another problem. But I think staff had some questions, about the location of the transformer. We worked with BED to try to find the right spot for it. I don't know that there's another spot for it, but I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the only other things to comment on is we reviewed with DPW the traffic generation, and there's certainly more space in the building, there's more parking, but the trip generations are below the standard for running a traffic impact analysis, and Laura Wheelock from DPW concurred with that finding. And I think those tables are in your in the application. They're it's below 75 trips in the peak hour.
So I have some questions about that, because I think you may see some neighbors believe otherwise based on our experience with the parcel across the street,
Yep.
the Albano's Deli. I noticed that you calculated it based off of medical office and residential or general office, right?
General office, that's right.
Yeah.
Clinic and general office.
But that's not all clinic and general office in that building, right?
What specifically are you thinking is not that category?
Well, is it, I mean, is this, I haven't looked at the specific, I'm trying to see in the staff report.
Kevin and I did have multiple phone conversations
yeah.
about trying to figure this out,
We
because it's
definitely didn't
not,
gloss
there's not
over
a
this, but-
straightforward,
It doesn't strike me as a
designation.
traditional medical office building.
Right. Right.
And there's a different component to it. And I'm wondering what the other, I'm trying to look at the elevations and floor plans, like what the other uses are that this could have been fit into, and how that affects the traffic generation. Because you're very close, and I know City Market did one, and I think the Alvanos property even did a traffic study, because that intersection can get problematic. It's nice that you're an existing use, and so we're really only measuring the delta between what's there today and what's there in the future. But since you're so close, I look at that, classification as medical office and general office, and I'm like, are we really within that sketch? Is this the standard sort of medical office that you would expect to see that trip generation number running from? And I'm putting it out there as a sketch plan for something you to think about, and whether or not you want to consider just doing a traffic study anyway, considering you're so close to the threshold, and this is this has been a fairly hot area for traffic issues, from the neighbors to the south, from Flynn Avenue and the Champlain Parkway, from the Alvanos development, from that, development, and because now I think all the traffic is going to be routed out of one driveway as opposed to two in the existing condition.
So a couple things on that. Certainly, I think we as a team should go back through our considerations and take that question and advisement and recheck. We did use medical clinic, general office, and that seemed to best fit. Certainly, general office relates to all of the operational office, management that happens at for the Howard Center, much like what I think is happening in 208 Flynn now, and some of the stuff that's in the existing facility. and the medical clinic relates to supporting, the folks that come in. The other option would have been like a doctor's office or dentist office, and it just didn't seem to fit that use. Maybe the medical clinic and dental or doctor's office are the closest, but general office certainly for management staff, and there really, I don't think, is another use in the building. So it's really that question of medical clinic versus medical office, which we can revisit. As far as the curb cuts are pretty similar. There's just the one on Pine and the one on Flynn. What we did do is make it possible, not for regular use, but it's possible to, in the future, if we wanted to allow for flexibility of passenger vehicles to leave from under the building out either towards Pine or Flynn. And our thought there was if there was an emergency vehicle pulled into either one of the curb cuts, cars could exit to the alternative curb cut, but it wouldn't be for regular use.
So I got confused then. So, okay, there's still going to be a curb cut out towards Pine as
Yep.
there is today.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's this accessory lot here, AJ, that's
Right.
served off of Pine, so we still have that curb cut there.
I didn't see any of the perspectives.
Is that lot accessible from under the building?
That's what Kevin was speaking to, that temporarily you can have that connect in the event of an emergency, but we wouldn't want that to be a regular traffic flow pattern for purposes of shortcutting the light.
The spaces are striped right now such that it.
They're striped such that you could not get through on a typical day. Yeah.
Will you actually, speaking of Pine Street, do you have any entrance to the building on Pine Street or facing Pine Street?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I can show you in more detail when we get to the floor
Can
plans.
you show us that?
Absolutely.
In the perspectives, it wasn't clear what we see this a lot, where we see sort of the main entrance of a building,
Mhm.
Particularly on Pine Street. We've seen this a few times. The main entrance for the pedestrian plaza, if you will, is facing a parking lot off the street.
Mhm.
We are trying to move towards street activation, so somebody
can-
walking on Pine Street could feel invited to enter the, not that it's
Yeah.
really a public
I can speak to
facility,
that.
but.
Oh, cool. Sort of works. All right.
That's all I have. Is there anything else I should jump in on other than the answer?
Look at all the hot topics.
Okay. Can you go to the landscape plan? So I'll keep all of this brief, but I can address some of your questions, AJ. So I think, Kevin, sorry, I'm Sam Beal from Duncan Wisniewski Architecture. They can't really see it. But on the Flynn side, we do have a rainwater catchment area and a extensive planting along Flynn, so I wanted to highlight that for the group. We also do have trees appropriately shading the western parking lot, which was an affirmative finding, I think, from zoning, that we were in compliance with the shading requirements. Other than that, I think we're trying to do a really nice landscape along Flynn Avenue while providing something that is going to be safe for Howard Center's staff and clients. Any questions about the landscape plan before I flip over to the architectural drawings?
There's a note about a very minor intrusion into the wetlands statutory buffer zone. I was wondering if you could just point that out.
Sure.
And you should-
Yeah, there are three buffers we should just clarify. One is so the wetlands basically are at the toe of the slope. You can see the hatch at the top of the page here. Right in there. And so from the edge of that wetland, there's a 50-foot state buffer, and there we do have some reconstruction of parking lots and a little bit of stormwater outfalls. The city also has a 100-foot buffer for the wetland, and then a 75 from the Englesby Brook, so there are three overlapping. So there are the reconstruction, and you can see the cross-hatching there, are in the 50-foot state buffer, and I think that's probably what's referenced in the staff findings. And instead of shedding towards the buffer untreated, it'll drain back into the treatment areas.
One question, just before you get off the site. Did you move, there's something about where the bus stop was, did that get moved, or where is that now?
Yes, so that was previously a little bit further north. Yeah, and it was kind of in front of the building. It was going to interrupt our Pine Street entrance, which I'll show you in more detail. And we worked with Green Mountain Transit to relocate it further south.
The existing plan would be helpful next time around.
Yeah, right? So you know it's there, I agree.
You'll see that for the next permit application, I promise. Okay, sure. Ooh, can you zoom in a little bit? So again, this is privileging the Flynn Avenue side, but you can see here the basic massing of the structure. We have 2 bars. We have a north bar and a south bar with a connecting bridge. And, you know, Kevin already spoke a little bit about the parking on the site and how we're parking underneath the building. I'll go to the next slide. So this is that main entrance that, yes, we lovingly rendered for you, AJ. We have 3 main materials here, and I did bring some show and tell if anybody's interested. But this is the Flynn Avenue side main entrance. You can see the Small Dog building beyond the orange and green structure.
This is a time for feedback. I will say,
Yeah.
to me, it's a very disappointing main entrance.
Okay.
It doesn't, you really, as a pedestrian, you really don't know where the entrance is, because it's really around the corner.
Yes.
You don't really see it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I know you got the overhang there, and you got a few other things.
Yeah. Well, I think to AJ's point previously, we were trying to balance 2 things. One is we have clients who arrive by vehicle, and so we need a main entrance that works for people who are arriving by vehicle. We also have people who arrive by foot, and bicycle and bus. And so trying to thread the needle to have a main entrance that does both is not perfect. The other thing is that our society still has stigmatism attached to people who seek mental health services. And so having the front entrance big and bold and beautiful in the front wasn't exactly perfect for our program. And so we were seeking something in between, which may be disappointing, Brad, but it's something that we were trying to find the right fit there to carefully balance both those 2 site considerations as well as our clients' need for some privacy as they're visiting.
We got the privacy part.
You know, I disagree, but, so on that main front facade, we have kind of 3 materials happening. We have a copper base, vertical siding, we have a high-density fiber cement above, 14-inch weather to lap. It is meant to reference some of the residential style construction that we have in this neighborhood. We also have a vertical blue siding that generally is where we have vertical circulation. And I don't have a sample, but the teal masonry columns are meant to create that bridge that connects between those copper siding and the high-density fiber cement. And that is something that we then tipped on our side to create a nice place to sit at our front entrance. As well as above, we have a material called dichroic glass, which does both a shadow and a reflection in different colors. And so that's what you kind of see above there. And so as the sun moves across this facade, we will have these changing colors and lights that will happen throughout the day to animate this facade.
The awning, like the awning, like?
It's these vertical fins right here that move up and down the building. We do have solar shading on the windows. One of the things we've learned from our mechanical engineer is that this is a cooling load dominated building, and so decreasing our solar heat gain coefficient is important, and so the solar shades are punctuating the facade in a nice way, but also doing good work in terms of reducing our energy. Next slide.
So those are glass panels that slide up and down in those grooves?
They do not actually physically slide, but they are located within a groove in a fixed position. So this is that Flynn Avenue facade. You can see just above, I didn't speak to it yet, but we have a rooftop terrace. We don't have a lot of outdoor space on this site, and so this is an important respite point for our staff to provide a place for them to get outdoors while they're working.
Staff's made a comment about that terrace, about what is that?
I have a wet bar there, and they say we can't do that, so that's understood.
It can't be habitable.
Yes.
Habitable. Okay.
I located a sink there because I felt like if the Howard Center staff wanted to have an event up there, it'd be nice to have a sink to be able to, do drinks or something. So understood, if that makes it habitable.
It can be habitable, so like
Yes.
you can't have an upstairs kitchen.
Understood.
But same as, greenhouses aren't counted towards
Mm-hmm.
in that height calculation, and frequently greenhouses have potting sinks. So
Right.
as long as we're all
Okay.
understanding
Okay.
what the use is for.
Got it.
I thought there was also a note about the height bonus and not having use on is that for the other side of the building, or was I misreading?
That's a general height request. That 5% variance is something that's allowed in the ordinance, and we were requesting that in part because the air-based geothermal heat pump system has some large ductwork. And so in order to get the floor-to-floor heights to work optimally, that extra 18 inches made a lot of difference between a mean 8-foot ceiling and a more generous 9-foot ceiling for staff.
Do you have the Pine Street?
Yes, so I can point that out to you here. So this is the Flynn Avenue facade we were recently looking at. This is the Pine Street facade here. We have 2 garage doors that open onto a shared community room that occurs on this lower level. The main entrance is here. Thank you. This is a vertical stair tower. We have offices above. And so we have the same masonry piers that are engaged on Flynn stretch out, create a courtyard space here in front of that multipurpose room. And then that's our main entrance with canopy, fronting directly onto Pine.
And is that considered the building main entrance? Will clients go to that entrance, or they come to the parking entrance?
They will come to the main entrance that I showed previously along Flynn.
Is that just like enter into a hallway, like the side door on a hotel kind of thing?
No, there will be a vestibule. Maybe we go to the floor plans next and I can show AJ what that looks like. So this is the basement. We have storage, mechanical, and bike storage. You can go next one unless you guys have questions. Okay, can you zoom into the northeast corner there, Mary, please? So these are those masonry piers I mentioned. This is the courtyard. That's okay. The courtyard outside of the multipurpose room. These are garage doors. This is that main entrance. Goes into a vestibule, open stair up to above, and then there's a hallway that takes you back to the garage, bathroom, and storage to serve that multipurpose room.
So that's garage beyond it?
Yes. So that multipurpose room and the other space effectively screens the parking garage from Pine Street. Any other questions about the Pine Street entrance? Okay.
It's really, not a main entrance, right? Because there's no elevator there or anything else like that.
Correct.
It's serving that multi-purpose room, it looks like, and
Yes.
the staff can get to it pretty easily, but
Yep.
the public, they probably wouldn't.
The public would not be invited to go there generally, unless there was an event, in the multipurpose space.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Garage doors not like as in access to the parking.
No, I apologize. That I could have foreseen that, sorry.
Roll-up doors.
Glass, roll-up doors so that we can have that outdoor space be married.
And is that
Better.
outdoor space that the Howard Center plans to use, or is that like going to be third-party commercial public space?
The intention is for them to use the space. Yeah. Can you take me to the southwest corner and I'll talk about the main entrance?
Do you know how high the building is compared to the one across the street?
Which building across the street? The
The
Small Dog?
building.
It's shorter because the Small Dog building's 4 stories. I don't know specifically how tall that building is. And so this south part of the building is Howard Center's first call and access and intake services. So clients will either go up the elevator to seek services on upper floors, or they will go right towards a waiting room. Can you take us to the second and third floor, please?
So before we go, I just,
Oh,
when we were discussing on Pine Street, the sauna, do we discuss how the front entrance had to face the street? So
Yes.
So I think there is a regulation, I forget which one, but it does reference how the main entrance should face the street.
Yeah, so we can talk about that, because I think the canopy and the entrance does face the street. The door faces west, which doesn't face directly to the street, but I don't think that a door facing directly onto the street is the only way you can achieve that. So upper floors, we have direct client treatment in some areas are more general office, administrative functions. The second and third floor are mostly the same footprint. And then the top floor is the aforementioned rooftop terrace with a potting sink, which we will relabel for the final permit applications. Thank you, Mary. And then I think towards the end, we have some elevations. What's that?
Avenues to success.
I appreciate it entirely, Mary. I'm also trying to be mindful of everybody's time. So we have elevations, which we can discuss, but I think we've seen most of it through the axonometrics and the renderings. And so I just wanted to mention before I... Yeah, sure. I mean, we have them here.
I'm unclear, there's some striping that. Can you explain what that is? What we're looking at on the lower level?
Yes. So this is garage screening. So we have vertical elements here that are screening the parking. So we need to provide the appropriate amount of airflow so that the garage can be an open garage, and therefore we don't have to have ventilation or sprinkler. This is the way the code works. And so these are vertical copper bars that create that visual separation so you don't see the parking as much, but you still have that good airflow to create the open. This is required.
So that's
Facing Anglesby.
Yes, yes. But I think, I've been walking on Pine Street as I've been working on this project, and as you walk south on Pine, on the west side, you will see through Anglesby Brook when the leaves are down. And so we want to make sure that facade is dressed up and, attractive so that in the winter it's nice.
And so those are wood or?
They would be copper to match the vertical copper siding that you see on the lowest bar of the building.
It appears that they're staggered a bit, or they're?
They're an offset sort of random pattern. Mm-hmm.
And how about the west elevation?
I want to make sure they understand that's a wall section.
Yes, that's a wall section, but showing you the
Yeah.
south side of the north bar. Yeah.
So we want to move to the next
West elevation.
west.
So west is if we are in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so there's a elevated sort of connector in the middle that's not all the way to the ground. And what is underneath that? Is that parking also, or?
We have tandem parking that would be for staff only, located in that area.
I'm assuming you've checked this, but we had another project that had a similar drive-through pass-through, and it was proposed to be, I think, a retirement community.
Mm-hmm.
And fire department was particularly, or at least we, based on some other concerns, were particularly focused on the height of those pass-throughs to make sure the fire trucks could easily pass through in the event of emergency, something happens in the
Yeah,
garage.
sure.
I'm assuming you've looked at that, but, you should have testimony present that is easily a pass-through for a full-size fire truck or ambulance.
Yeah, it's not intended to be. I mean, that would be 13'6". We did have a technical review meeting with, I can't speak to the other project you looked at and what site constraints might have required a truck to pass through. Yeah.
But you remember what I'm talking about? But yeah.
I think like the whole entrance and all the parking was through, like you had to go through
Yeah,
there.
if you had to drive through the
Yeah.
building to get to another part of the site, I would concur.
I think that may have been it, but
Yeah.
then make sure to make that clear
Yeah, and so-
in your formal presentation.
Sounds good.
I do remember that directly.
Yep, and we also had a technical review meeting, and the fire marshal Stone reviewed the project.
Okay, well.
He did want consideration for a riser inside the parking should his staff need to go in, but he didn't want to drive through.
So I'm just interested in that gap below again. No screening there. If you're walking north on Pine, passing by the building, are you sort of looking underneath the building to the parking?
You would be screened because, well, if you walk by that, there's the fourplex, and then there's quite a lot of vegetation there, so I don't think you would actually see through there, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
I wasn't following the logic of where the screening was relative to where
Right.
the views are going to be.
We privileged the screening to where the typical parking was going to occur. The tandem parking, I did not see that as I didn't think that was going to be a typical use. We'll see. Operationally, we're not sure. But it's a good observation.
But this is sort of a curiosity question.
Yep.
The copper, is that a copper panel, just copper bent and made into panels, or is it copper
On the
wrapped
siding,
something?
that's what we're hoping for, though. Copper is very expensive these days, so we'll see what happens.
A little bit too, so
What's that?
it bleeds a little bit.
Yes, it does. No, it has a lot of qualities, but that is something that we're still exploring, and we do have a CM on board who's going to give us some pricing input, and we may have a different story when we present finally. Yeah. Still something that will meet the ordinance, of course.
Interesting materials. I will say dichroic glass is something I've seen it sculpturally a lot. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It's
so.
awesome, yeah. Okay. Any other questions about the elevations?
Thank you.
Okay, so I had a couple of things that I wanted to say before I finish talking. One is we'll close out the existing permits. Howard Center is aware of that now, and we'll take care of that before the final permit application. I appreciate the input that's happened kind of as we've been having this conversation, and so it seems like folks have read the staff comments and you've identified areas where you had more questions, so I appreciate that. I would like some consideration or a confirmation that you agree with the staff about the 5% height variation allowance. That's a really important thing for us to know for sure going into the final permit application. Similarly, we'll submit the photometric.
We don't have the authority on sketch plan to let you know for sure.
You can't let me know for sure, but it would be nice if you discussed it and, it was in the minutes. The photometric plan we'll submit, and it'll comply with the zoning ordinance. Did also want two other things. We talked about the traffic study. The other piece is staff determined a max on-site parking based on 8.19, and some discussion of that. And perhaps not confirmation, but acknowledgement of the staff review of that would be helpful.
You're below the maximum.
We are well below the max, but the client would like to have future flexibility in case needs change. We think parking's going the other way, but we're trying to preserve optionality.
Where?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think our typical sketch plan approach is to really deliberate, and I don't think we necessarily have the authority to do that. You haven't heard any particular questions or concerns about the height from the board? So I would take that to be an indication that we generally think the heights, staff's.
And I think the the commitment to energy performance of the building is respected, I would say.
Understood.
Understood.
Okay.
That's you got a lot going on here. The solar panels on the roof.
Yes.
And as for the parking, you're under the max. Like, we can't say one way or the other about the desire to go up to the max in the future. You're under the max. It seems like the calculation's done. It's fairly mathematic. If it's operationally enough parking for you, then great, but if you need more, then there's a max, and you're below the max. I can't see what shakes out, what becomes a critical permit condition through all of this, but.
Okay.
The future parking seems more like a site constraint than a zoning constraint.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Unless you figure out a way to add another 25 spaces to that site. It's not something we can figure out now, but.
Agreed.
There's also off-site parking, That's one of
Yes.
the other things you can look at is off-site parking. I know there's
Yes.
some other parking available in the area, maybe. So if you needed more space, you could consider doing it that way in your application as extra or overflow.
Right.
Howard Street control the house on the corner?
No.
I wanted to make sure everyone understood, this is a segregate lot here that's
Yeah.
not involved.
Yeah.
When we talked about what will you see coming up Pine Street, in fact, with this connector, you will see there's a lot and landscaping there, so.
And you're, yeah.
Yeah, it would be a very different design, I think, if we had control of that corner parcel.
I gathered that.
I had one other straw poll question, and it goes back to AJ, your comment about the traffic study, and, you know, we don't think one's required. We've met with DPW, who has a good feel about the intersections, especially they have a better sense with the Parkway coming in and how that might change the immediate intersection, which I drive through every day, so I appreciate your concerns. And so we are close. We think we use the right designation. But if it's going to get to the point where you think either for your own needs or to, you know, satisfy what you might hear from the neighborhood or neighbors, if you think you're going to ask for one, might want to get a tip of the hat sooner rather than later, because that's a time component.
Have you heard any neighbors asking for one? Has anyone expressed?
Not that I've heard.
We had an
I've heard
NPA
any.
meeting, right?
Yeah. No one's here today either, so,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good sign. I just know you're close and
yeah, no, it's a good point.
want you to just be prepared to defend it if you have to. And we know the intersection does get problematic more so in the AM peak, which is likely before your peak traffic generation occurs. And it just would be it would be good to know for the record, the impacts of this on that intersection.
Yep.
That's not a full traffic study, doesn't have to be a full-blown traffic study, but just maybe a little bit more rounded out, I think, would be beneficial. We've put other people in that area through those steps.
Yeah, I would say the trip generation is much more spread throughout the day for this sort of a use than, of course, a residential use or other. So you've got visits throughout the day, including staff coming and going who are out making visits themselves.
Just general question. So a lot of the curbing along Flynn Avenue is the existing pattern, isn't it?
That's right.
And I'm just wondering about street trees. There don't seem to be a lot of street trees on the north side of Flynn Avenue. They seem to have a fair number on the south.
There historically wasn't a sidewalk along the north side of Flynn, and so when the sidewalk went in, it was justified as close to the road as it could get it, and so there's not a lot of room for street trees.
Nothing in those bump outs.
There's power poles.
That's the thing, we have overhead power on this side
Yeah.
of the street, so we're limited
I
there.
do think on the landscape plan, we're adding some trees right on the back side of the sidewalk, which is on our property, so they aren't street trees, but they'll read as trees along the street. I think, aren't there right on the either side of the entry?
Can you go to the flip to the landscape plan? I don't remember.
Yeah, I know there's
The,
landscaping, I just can't remember how vertical it is.
Be the next sheet, or 2 sheets down. Yeah. Whoop, you went all the way.
Whoa.
I think 3 or 4.
Maybe not per the rendering. Maybe they're.
Looks like
four.
mostly smaller
Yeah.
vegetation.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got there. So there's
We do have one tree that I think we're gonna have to adjust because it's right on top of the transformer. But
We'll put it on the power pole instead.
yeah. No, it's mostly smaller vegetation along Flynn, no street trees specifically in front of the building.
One piece I just wanted to add in response to the questions about the entrance is a couple of the considerations that Howard Center has were we have quite a few clients who arrive by SSTA, and these are some clients currently served in our downtown location on Winooski Avenue that has proved increasingly challenging for the SSTA to be able to stop and have those clients get out and access the entrance that's right on Winooski Avenue. And so we're mindful of that, being able to pull off safely, as well as clients, particularly those in wheelchairs coming off the SSTA, being able to get easily into the building, and also thinking about crisis services being located here. And so when folks are arriving, oftentimes by car, other ways as well, but when we have individuals and families and children arriving, being able to enter the building with some discretion was front of mind for us as well.
Okay.
Okay.
I will note, I like the Flynn Avenue facade.
Okay, thanks.
It's a constant issue. I mean, we had it at the, whatever, the hotel that's next to the TD Bank building.
Yeah.
You know, that they try to do all these things to make it an entrance, and it's, you know, they weren't that successful there, but.
Back in the, off of the, under the Porte de Cochere.
Yeah, and the Port Cochere into the Armory building.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not an unusual problem, and you can't deny some functionality issues, but, yeah.
We deal with it on most of our urban projects where you have people arriving in a suburban way in a vehicle and people arriving by pedestrian. You don't want to have two entrances. It's a problem.
I'll say that I like the 3 light wells in the north building.
Oh, yeah, I think those are going to be nice spaces for the staff. It's a relatively deep footprint, and so we wanted to make sure we got as much natural light into the inside of the building.
Well, it's been a nice presentation. I think you've heard generally board feedback.
Yep.
It's good. We need it. Obviously, there's a need for it. Howard Center seems like it's put a lot of effort into this, and I think we all look forward to seeing it in final form, obviously, shortly.
Yep.
No comment.
So just a public comment, so it wasn't necessary or desirable to present this to the Neighborhood Planning Assembly for Ward 5?
It
did.
did
Oh, you
go.
did?
Yeah.
Where was I?
I think you were there.
Oh, it was back that far. Okay, my apologies. Checking, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so I guess that, anybody objection? We'll close the sketch plan. Thanks.
Thank you, AJ.
That our meeting's done.
Oh, we have other.
Oh, we have other, our public.
Zoning permit.
We have one other item,
Oh, yeah.
very high stakes.
I actually have a
Reading
comment.
those red lines,
actually.
very important.
No, I actually have a comment about the draft changes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Two.
boy.
So, number 11, the incorporation reference of all plans presented.
Yep.
If you look at, I think it's condition 2 of standard Act 250 permits, they say the project shall be completed in accordance with all the plans and testimony and evidence. Maybe look at that language. I think it's a little bit more than incorporation by reference. I think it says the project has to be completed in accordance with all of the representations and plans on file so that they become binding conditions.
Okay, so Act 250.
Yeah, I can send you the language.
Okay.
And then on number 12, boundary seems, I understand the logic, but what about other types of property disputes? Like, they don't have the right to use my driveway for this project, or we've had a few of those that are more than boundary, easement type stuff.
What about them? They're,
Say boundary and, land, yeah, property disputes, deed, I mean, we've had deed fights before and things all like that. I'm just trying to be less than specific on that, that's all.
okay. And I thought you were just gonna say toss the liquor license condition. Should be okay with me, but.
I don't care. Well, should it also say cannabis license?
Oh, God. Yeah, sure.
I don't know. That came up last time we had somebody here.
Yeah.
Seemed very nervous about it.
If we're not licensing pickleball, we're okay.
And growing mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's next.
I have a question, Scott. So permitting and inspections, that's the division, right?
No, that's the department.
That's the department.
Yeah.
And is zoning exist in there?
Yes.
Because I don't see zoning on anything else. It says zoning permit, but is there a zoning department?
division.
Is there a zoning division?
There's a zoning division. It's been a while since we updated these. I know Ken Lerner did the update of these last, so I'm gonna guess 10 years ago, at least. So there's a lot of language referring to Public Works and ISD, Inspection Services Division. That's now moot, right? So it's the zoning division and the trades division that deal with all of this
So
permitting stuff.
zoning division is where one gets zoning permits.
Yep,
And trades division is where one gets building permits?
Trade
correct.
permits, yeah.
Yeah, but we're both in the same department,
In the same building now,
the
finally.
same building. So do you want to see these with revisions per AJ's comments before taking action, or do you want to take action with conditions for the conditions to reflect his comments?
Yeah, why don't we just do a revised version? We can,
Okay,
I'll send it to you tomorrow.
okay, perfect.
And then we can just start putting it in permits too. All right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. So with that, we'll close our public meeting.
Yes.